What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Spencer, doing a redo of Friday's Delivering Sports Show. I'm sorry about all those technical difficulties. I'm not going to be re-showing you what I did on Friday, like some of those segments. If you are interested in those original ones, like that I did with Brad and everyone else, you can go on my YouTube page at Delivering Sports. You just look it up. I'll be like on the top result, of course. And then we can go from there. But I wanted to bring on another guest today, someone who's going to be going through basically all these topics once again, but I wanted to do it live. And that is Chris Wynn. He's here in the studio with me, the new studio, as I should say, which is really, really exciting. Chris, thanks for joining the show today.
It's great to be here, Spence. What's going on, my friend?
Just enjoying life and, ready for a great show because there's a lot going on. Obviously, this is kind of the prime time of sports, it feels like. And we'll start none other than in the NFL draft. And we'll go local here. Of course, the Las Vegas Raiders had a bit of a interesting draft, right? You have the drafting of Alex Leatherwood, a bit of a reach here in the first round. And in the second round, they end up moving and getting up what I consider to be the best safety in the draft. I think there were a little bit of health concerns, but it seems we have moved past that now. He seems to have moved past it. And I think the Raiders got a steal in the second. So in reality, they draft a guy in the first round who should have been in the second and someone in the second who should have been in the first.
It's pretty funny, though, Spence, because let's be honest. When they did make the pick for Alex Leatherwood out of Alabama in the first round, the initial reaction from a lot of whether it was Las Vegas Raider fans, whether it was people in the media, whether it was people that are just close to the organization, there was big surprise, okay? Because Alex Leatherwood was thought to be a guy who could be possibly, early second round at best, and possibly into the middle of the second round. So there was a lot of rationalization going around and people saying, what are they doing? And this is, it wasn't to disparage Leatherwood as a player because the guy has potential. There's no doubt. He has upside. And he could end up being an all-pro type of offensive lineman for much of his career. But there were other people there that you looked at any mock draft, okay, regardless of whether there were going to be trades or what was going to go on. And it is absolutely fair to say that Alex Leatherwood would not have been the pick there at number 17 for the Raiders. So it was looked at as a reach. I thought it was a reach. Could it work out where it's a fine pick and he ends up being a solid guy that anchors that line for the Raiders for many years? Absolutely, it could. And he could be that guy. But I would even say this, Spence, that they would have been received much better if they would have drafted the guy Mooring, who they drafted in the second round, in the first round. They would have been fine. You know what I mean? But so, I mean, at the end of the day, it's obviously a wait and see because it's the NFL draft. It's a wait and see. But there was a lot of people questioning that it was definitely not a value pick taking Leatherwood there at 17.
Yeah, and the thing is I think Leatherwood is fine, and he will be the starting tackle for many years to come for the Raiders. And again, like you said, he could be a Pro Bowl caliber tackle. But the issue I have with the pick more than anything is this is a problem that Mike Mayock created for himself. He let go of like half of the offensive line, if not all of them. I think there's like one returning starter. Colton Miller got the extension. I think they had released Richie Incognito and re-signed him again on a smaller deal. But other than that, they ate cap on a lot of these guys who were Pro Bowl, if not all pro caliber guys, making it a little more mysterious that you have to fix the problem that you've created, even when there's probably better prospects out there on the offensive line before him. So I want to talk about the Raiders for just a quick second. And people talk about give Mike Mayock time. But as I've seen him and what I've seen him do, which is basically nothing, if not make the team worse. I mean, you want to talk about this offseason, I just talked about the offensive line. And on top of that, he spent the rest of their free agency money on a backup running back. And Pro Football Focus, by the way, had an article that talked about how they have the best like 1-2 tandem. I don't care about 1-2 tandems about running backs anymore. We are well past that in the NFL, in my opinion, when we don't have any starting caliber defensive tackles, only one starting caliber linebacker, if you want to say that. Trayvon Mullen's okay at the corner position, but they're so depleted there. And Richard Sherman is still a free agent at this point, but they can't pay him. They're going to have to restructure some more contracts if they want to make that happen. And then we can talk about the history of Mike Mayock and the whole Antonio Brown situation. You can go to drafting Jonathan Abrams in the first round. Josh Jacobs, I think, was a reach in the first round as well. Cleveland Farrell, of course, was a complete failure. I think he's ridden the coattails of Max Crosby and Hunter Renfrow from one draft where he got lucky. So how do you evaluate Mike Mayock, and what do you think that how long should they give him before it's like, come on, this is awful?
Al, I think there's still time when it comes to Mike Mayock, but there's absolutely room for criticism regarding him, and there has been, right? I mean, there already has been. And as I pointed out, obviously, when you're talking about the NFL draft, day one is the first round, okay? And the Raiders had one pick. And you went on sports radio here in Las Vegas on Friday morning after what went down the day before, and people were already criticizing Mike Mayock, right? And they're already hammering him for the leg. And I got into how we still think he can be great. That's fine. That's fine and dandy. But when it comes to the first round, people want value, right? And in some cases, depending on the team, you want to have somebody that's going to inject some excitement into your franchise. And that's not; those are two things I think that the Raiders didn't get with their first round pick. So, but not to get too in depth as far as Mayock, I think he still has a little bit of a leash. You know, I don't think there's any situation right now where the Raiders are looking to turn the page on him by any stretch of the imagination. But at the same time, you know, if we have another ho-hum season, you know, if they end up going, 7-10, something along those lines, or, you know, and are nowhere near contention in the AFC, then there's going to be real issues with him, and there's going to be people calling for his head. So it really just it depends on how these picks pan out and how the team chemistry-wise responds here in 2020-21, or excuse me, 2021-22 going forward.
Yeah, well, I'd like to pivot a little bit because you just talked about how successful they will be this season, and we'll get right back to the NFL draft. But Aaron Rodgers did have a very short list of teams he'd like to be traded to, and the Raiders did happen to be one of them. So we'll talk about the whole Aaron Rodgers situation in a second, but specifically for the Raiders, would it even be worth it for them to trade for someone like Aaron Rodgers? Is he going to be that much of a difference maker I mean, he has carried Green Bay, we know, for his entire career. The fact that he only has one Super Bowl is nothing short than a complete colossal failure on behalf of Green Bay. But the Raiders would have to give up Derek Carr, obviously, a bunch of first-round picks, second-round picks, the whole lot for the 38-year-old quarterback. Could he do enough for Vegas in, let's say, the next 3 seasons to make that worth it for them? I
think the short answer is yes. If you can make a move to get a guy like this with the personnel that you do have now, and you pointed it out, it'll end up being a lot of draft picks. It's not going to be, they're not going to trade Josh Jacobs. They're not going to trade most likely Henry Ruggs, right? They're not going to trade, a couple other younger pieces. I don't think it's going to end up being Derek Carr. And you mentioned Derek Carr. I mean, obviously he's a quarterback for quarterback. They're going to get, Derek Carr has no job here if Aaron Rodgers is the guy. Yeah. So that makes all kinds of sense. So I mean, look, I have no dog in the fight. I'm not a Raiders fan. Okay. I've covered the team for one season. And I think that, yes, you roll the dice and you make that move. You can question and ask yourself, where does this put them in the AFC, right? You can it's a fair question to ask because there's still the Chiefs out there. There's still other teams in the AFC that I would think that would be better, even if you do have Aaron Rodgers here in Vegas. But if there's some type of scenario out there that presents itself where you could get the MVP from last season, and it happens to be Aaron Rodgers, who I think has probably 3 or 4 good years left at least in his career, I absolutely think you make that move.
Okay, well, let's think about it this way, because you actually have to take the field and play the games, because on paper, it's great to have Aaron Rodgers. I think the offense, of course, would probably be top 3 in the league. I think he'd find Henry Ruggs better than anyone else. He understands the deep ball. I think from a fundamental, like attacking the defense, Josh Jacobs is fine. Kenyon Drake, of course, Pro Football Focus will tell you it's the best running back duo in the league. And then you have other weapons around, like Darren Waller would probably have like a 1,500-yard season with that. So I don't think the problem is going to be offensively. I have no doubt that Aaron Rodgers would play to an MVP level with that team and put up the kind of stats to do that. The only problem is you don't have a defense. You have like one of the least talented defenses in the NFL. And I don't know why Aaron Rodgers would be willing to succumb to that kind of thing, because it's not getting any better. They are against the cap. He would be protected. He would be great for himself, but I think he's sick of that. I guess the idea is that Green Bay has not given him any weapons in so long. He's so desperate to be a part of a team with that kind of offense. And of course, him and John Gruden would be masterminds together. But I just don't think you can win football games the way the Raiders are currently constructed. They can't cover anybody. And they were putting up like 32 points a game last season. That's extremely impressive. And the thing with John Gruden that I always say is the only thing John Gruden can't do is put the ball in his hands and throw the football. He knows where it's supposed to go, and I think that connection would be great. But again, their defense is so horrendous. I don't think you can carry a team, certainly to a deep postseason run, which when you trade for Aaron Rodgers, that's what you're banking on. You're banking on a Super Bowl or either an appearance at the very least. And I don't think that's even physically possible to do with the Raiders.
I think you make some excellent points that it's tough to argue with, Spence, but you pose the question to me from the standpoint of the Raiders, right? And what the Raiders would want. Obviously, if you're Aaron Rodgers, and by the way, we're talking about the NFL here. There's no trade clauses. Yeah. There's no, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So if the Green Bay Packers, they're going to make the best deal possible that they can make if they're going to trade him, which we don't even know they're going to trade him yet. You know what I mean? Like we understand that they're putting it out there. Both the general manager, LaFleur, all these guys are saying how there's no way we don't want to part with Aaron Rodgers, which makes total sense. Okay, he just won the MVP. He's your leader of your team. He's the face of your franchise. So from their standpoint, they don't even want to trade him right now. But they may be pushed into a position, and I'm sure we're going to get into this as far as like the dynamics and what can take place. But like, I'm just talking about it from the Raiders standpoint, is if they're going to make a move to get him, and if you're going to have him here, they're not looking at it from a standpoint of our defense is awful and we can't stop anybody. They're looking at it from the standpoint of we're getting Aaron Rodgers, the MVP last year, to replace basically Derek Carr. We're going to give up a lot of draft picks, and we're going to give up assets, but we're figuring the trade-off is going to be beneficial to us as a franchise. And I know it may sound crazy. It's not always about the wins and losses, right? It's not always about the wins and losses.
Sure,
especially when it's Aaron Rodgers coming to Vegas, and coming to the AFC, because he's never going to get traded to an NFC team. It was never going to happen. No. He was never going to the Niners, as poetic as that seemed, being at West, being a Bay Area guy and all that. The Packers would never trade him to the Niners. It's in the conference. It'd be moronic beyond all belief if they went that direction. So if he does get traded, and that's a big if, he's going to end up in Denver, a small possibility here in Vegas, and maybe even and if there is an NFC team, Spence, if there is an NFC team, it's going to be the Saints. Okay, so that to me, that's the only options we're talking about here. But in the end, if you're the Raiders, getting back to the Raiders and circling this around, the Raiders are viewing it as an addition, not so much about their defense, which they were able to address some pieces in the draft, obviously, later on in the draft, as far as their defense. And you pointed it out, the defense is bad. It's horrible. And they just cut, by the way, they just cut Jeff Heath too, the safety.
Who was their best safety last year.
Yes. So, I mean, you're getting rid of a guy who was on the field and playing for you last year. Yes, the defense was bad, but I don't really see a whole lot of logic there. The defense is not going to be good next year either. So we'll see how that all shakes out.
Yeah, so we can transition over to a more generic Aaron Rodgers. And as of right now, Green Bay says they're not even taking calls. They took one call from Paxton, which I don't even know why, maybe just to taunt them to say no because they dislike them so much. Yeah. But come on, I mean, he is 38 years old now. I mean, he's going to be probably turning 39 during the season. And I know he played to an MVP level, and he's still very good. He will be good for the next 3 years. But do you think Green Bay has positioned themselves to make a Super Bowl run this season? I mean, they've been handily taken out, like leading up to the Super Bowl. Now they have made the playoffs, so that's a kind of a given with Aaron Rodgers. But if you're not going to win a Super Bowl, and you kind of realize that now, and you've traded up to take Jordan Love last year, his value is only going to get worse as he gets into his 40s. Why aren't they taking phone calls for Aaron Rodgers right now? They should be taking this a lot more seriously than I think they are.
You want to look at this negatively, or you want to look at this positively? Half glass full, yes. Half glass empty. First off, half glass empty. Okay, Packers haven't given him any help. Okay, they haven't drafted guys that they need to draft. Okay, they've gone other directions, i.e., a quarterback last year early on in the draft, which was call it what you will as far as Aaron Rodgers is concerned, but they basically picked his successor right in the draft last year. They haven't made any significant moves as far as the wide receiver position. Yes, they have Devontae Adams there in Green Bay, okay? Yes, they have a couple tight ends that are good. Yes, they have Aaron Jones, who's a stud as a running back. And now he's flipped to the glass half full. They were in the NFC Championship game last year, okay? Obviously, because a big part of that is Aaron Rodgers playing at MVP level, Okay. And Aaron Jones having a breakout season. And Devontae Adams doing what Devontae Adams does. But so from a positive standpoint, they're right there. They were right there last year. They lost to the Super Bowl champion in Tampa Bay. Does that obviously translate to them doing that this year? Not necessarily. And now you have this scenario where you have a quarterback who is unhappy and a quarterback who's got other interests. We just saw him a matter of days ago hosting Jeopardy. You know what I mean? Like this is a guy who, aside from being a quarterback, right, and being one of the best, if not arguably the best quarterback right now in the NFL, he also is a guy that can be a game show host, and that if he wanted to get drastic, he could just say I'm retiring and just go host Jeopardy for a year, and then maybe kind of feel things out and see what he could do as far as making a move in the NFL again. So from a Packers standpoint, which is what you're bringing up, I think that they're a team that was in the NFC Championship game last year with him, and I'm just flabbergasted at how this is all shaken out. And the timing of it was just weird, wasn't it, Spence? Because it all went down right before the draft.
I think he was trying to plead to them to draft a receiver in the first round, and they still didn't do it. And
they still it wasn't, I don't know if it was thumbing their nose at Aaron Rodgers or it was just it wasn't taunting him. It was just a matter of, we're going to make our decisions and we're not going, and it's almost like they have a disregard for him when it comes to making personnel decisions. And in today's NFL, this as much as I do, the quarterback in the NFL is big time when it comes to, the impact that these guys have and the their importance in the franchise. It's not like it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, pre-social media, the atmosphere that we're in today, where quarterbacks, and I'm not talking about, the run-of-the-mill, below-average guys who, are playing the quarterback position on NFL teams. I'm talking about the Bradys. I'm talking about the Aaron Rodgers. I'm talking about the Pat Mahomes. I'm talking about guys like that. They have, and I think rightfully so, have a lot of clout in the organization. And there seems to be this idea that Aaron Rodgers is getting that pulled away from him a little bit in Green Bay. A lot of it. And not a little bit, a lot of it in Green Bay. And he feels disrespected at some point. And I don't know if you saw what Terry Bradshaw said about him and, basically calling him weak because of, the way that he's taken the fact that they drafted a quarterback last year, obviously in Jordan Love and a lot of personnel decisions that it doesn't look like Aaron Rodgers is even in the loop. And I'm not making a judgment as to whether or not he should or shouldn't be. I'm just pointing out what appears to be the obvious. He's not very happy with the Green Bay Packer organization and the direction they're going or the efforts that they're making, particularly on the offensive side of the ball for him. And also, I think the draft pick may have something to do with it. I don't know how much, but Spence, I mean, you're a superstar quarterback. Are you really going to be threatened by a guy they drafted, last year when you point out he's 38 years old. You know what I mean? Like you're going to be looking down the road for a quarterback. So I don't know if I necessarily agree with Aaron Rodgers being that upset about the drafting of Love up in Green Bay. But it doesn't matter what I think. It just matters what his feelings are there. And it appears that it doesn't just appear that way. It is a bad situation right now in Green Bay. And I don't know if it's something that gets fixed.
I think you have to contextualize what he was so upset about. I think if Jordan Love had fallen to them, it may not be such an issue. I think the first round was part of it, but I think them trading up to get an asset and it not being something for him is what upset him the most, being that he may have thought that they were trading up to take Justin Jefferson. And could you imagine if Justin Jefferson was on Green Bay now? They may have gone to the Super Bowl. They weren't that far off. I mean, last year they did get outplayed in the second half, but you don't know when you have Justin Jefferson made all pro in his rookie season, something that is rarely seen. He had one of the best rookie seasons ever from a receiver standpoint, at least. So there's that. And I do want to talk about kind of this unprecedented time of player management relationships, because we also saw that with Russell Wilson earlier this season, where he went on Dan Patrick to kind of voice his concerns. And I think the NBA is a lot more developed in that sense, where LeBron has fired coaches. They basically have the complete say. And I think the problem is it's a lot easier in the NBA. There's only 11 guys on that roster, so it's a little bit of a more intimate atmosphere. But I think Green Bay needs to meet him down the middle, because when you don't, you have him threatening to retire. And I think he might be serious. Now, would he want to pay back, I think $40 million? Probably not. It's more, I think, of a smokescreen, but he's trying to get the general manager fired. And that's what happens when you push someone so far, when all they're asking for is a little bit of help in the first round. So it is a really interesting situation. We'll see. Do you think he actually could retire? Do you think he'd be willing to pull the trigger and lose that much money?
I think it's a possibility. I don't think it's likely, though. You bring up an interesting point, though, about, the general manager and the comments he's made and the kind of backdoor way that I don't know if it was his reps or his agent that put it out there that he wanted the general manager fired in Green Bay. And obviously there's a lot of chatter over sports radio here the last week or so about having that ability, right? And he would end up being like the first player ever in NFL history that would be able to get a move made like that, where a front office person was fired because of, the feelings of one player, and look, we get it, it's the quarterback, but I think that's absolutely preposterous to think that one player, would be able to, in a position to get a general manager fired. I think that's completely ridiculous. And I don't think that's cool at all. And that's the one beef I have with Aaron Rodgers on this. I think if you're Aaron Rodgers and you have these feelings about your GM because of the moves he's made, or because you don't think that he's up to snuff for the job as general manager, you got to own it. You got to come out and you got to say that yourself. You don't do it, sideways. You don't do it through your agent. You don't do it through representatives. You don't do it through PR people. You do it yourself. You man up and you go out there and you say, okay, I don't think this person should. Now, at the end of the day, I don't think you should do it at all. I don't think that's the quarterback or any player. It's their job or position to be going out and talking about not only front office people. I don't think players should be going and saying, I don't want this guy on the team, or this guy shouldn't be here. This guy should be gone. This guy should be gone. No, as a player, that's not your job. That's the job of the general manager and the head coach to do that, or the coaching staff to do that. It's not the player's decision. And there was talk about this earlier with Michael Irvin back in the mid-'90s with the Dallas Cowboys. Apparently, he was walking around the locker room one time with one of the officials from the Cowboys. He was trying to say how this guy should be out of here, and this guy needs to be out of here. This guy needs to be out of here. I mean, that's all complete BS, Spence, in my opinion. That should not be happening, okay? Players, that's not your place, all right? That's not your decision. And I don't care if you're Tom Brady or if you're Pat Mahomes or if you're the third-string guy on the defense. You shouldn't be doing that. So that's why I have a problem with Aaron Rodgers in that respect, as far as the whole deal and the way that he's dealt with that, as far as the GM's concerned. But as far as him, I have no problem with his beef with the Packers, as far as the personnel decisions, as far as the transactions that have taken place. We talked about them, and therefore, I would think, I got to be honest, Spence. I think it'd be good for everybody, in some way. Much less so for the Packers, but obviously be great. I think it would be better for Aaron Rodgers to maybe go to another team and maybe be in a different type of situation. But again, I don't think I think there's only a few teams that it could possibly be a win-win situation for.
You think Aaron Rodgers has a Super Bowl left in him? I think he's dead serious about all these side projects. He's on the Pat McAfee show on a weekly basis, even during the season. Now he says he thinks he can do Jeopardy full-time and football. That's just not realistic, at least not from a Super Bowl winning standpoint. So do you think he still has another run left in him? Like, truly, not getting to the NFC Championship game, getting to the Super Bowl, and not only being there, but winning?
I'm a Detroit Lions fan, so obviously there's going to be some implicit bias here on my account. I do think he does have one left in him. I think he does have an opportunity, say if he goes to the Denver Broncos, right? Or if he goes to the New Orleans Saints, I absolutely think he has a chance. Obviously, it's dependent on where he is. If he ends up staying in Green Bay, there's going to be some mending that's going to have to happen, I think, obviously. I don't think it takes any rocket scientist to figure that out, that if he does stay in Green Bay for them to make a Super Bowl run, there's going to have to be some kumbaya stuff going on there. But the short answer is yes. I think he does have it left in him. And I mean, you could take a look at it from the perspective also of there's just a lot of people out there gunning and for a Super Bowl, i.e. a team with a chip on their shoulder like the Chiefs, a team like the Baltimore Ravens, a team like maybe the Indianapolis Colts, a team like the Cleveland Browns, teams, teams like the New Orleans Saints. I mean, there's teams out there that are going to have a shot to make a move. The Los Angeles Rams. So there's competition out there for him. But to answer your question, Spence, yes, I do think that in the right situation, absolutely, Aaron Rodgers could be the guy that's the field general to lead a team to a Super Bowl.
I think the Saints would probably be the only one I'd be willing to accept, although they'd have to give up a tremendous amount, and maybe even Lattimore. But that was Aaron Rodgers talk there. We'll transition back into the draft, and somebody who's also been criticized for not caring all the way about football is the first overall pick, Trevor Lawrence. How do you feel like about the whole drama that went down before the draft? Like, does he have the juice? Does he not care enough about football, or is this guy just doing his business and he's going to take care of it when it's time?
I think he is a generational talent. I think as of right now, having an analysis on Trevor Lawrence, how can you not expect him to be a franchise quarterback that is probably one of the top talents in the last 25 years? I don't understand how you can't have that viewpoint given his resume in college. He can only do what he can do in college. I mean, and the guy was unbelievable. You could argue he's a top 2 or 3 quarterback of all time in college football. So, and he's got the credentials. He's got the national championship. He's got the Heisman Trophy. He's got all that. The reason I question, as anyone would, is you're going to Jacksonville. Okay. You're going to the Jaguars, and outside of a couple AFC Championship game appearances back in the early 2000s, right, and late 90s, where those guys are all grandfathers now, basically, that played on those teams. This is not a franchise that is littered with success. Let's put it that way.
Sure, yeah.
And it is not an atmosphere that is conducive to winning. It doesn't have they don't have a winning culture in Jacksonville. It's a franchise that has flirted with moving many times and still may move. So you got to like some of the pieces, though, that they added there. Obviously, they added weapons at the wide receiving core there with picking up the likes of Marvin Jones and we understand what they have at the running back position and defensively they're solid. So I think they're going the right way there, in the right direction. But the proof's going to be in the pudding. It's going to be what you can do on the field, and you're talking about a coach that's making the transition from the broadcast booth, and oh, by the way, he's making the transition from the broadcast booth and then from college football to the NFL. And we've seen that can be a dicey situation across the board there. So obviously you got some familiarity in the draft too, as they drafted Travis Etienne, the running back there. So he's going to have his backfield mate there that he had in college. It's going to be interesting, to say the least, to see what happens. But I'm not holding out hope anytime soon that they're going to be a contender. But I fully expect, with him at the helm, that there should be there's reason for optimism for Jacksonville Jaguar fans that he's their quarterback.
Yeah, the Urban Meyer situation really is interesting, because if you look at the way he ran his offense, there are pro-style offenses in the NFL or in college football, but he did not run one of them. You want to go down the list of successful Ohio State quarterbacks that was under him, none of them translated to the NFL. So he is obsessed with the game of football. That's the best part about it, I guess you could say. And he'll have all the opportunity in the world to be successful. I do like a lot of their young pieces. I think they have one of the most desirable rosters. If I was a free agent GM and I could have my pick of the litter, they'd be pretty high on my list. Talking about CJ Henderson from last year, I think is a very good corner. And you can go down the list of their impressive defensive players, especially at the linebacker position. So I think they'll be fine. I really don't take too much to it. I mean, you're talking about Aaron Rodgers, who's kind of had the same attitude now, and he's had a pretty darn successful career, I would say. Now, does that mean he'll win like 5 Super Bowls like Tom Brady? Maybe not. I think you do have to be a little bit of a lunatic to be that successful like Tom Brady, where football is your top priority. It's just not the way that it is for everybody. And you can even go to the NBA and you want to talk about guys like that. Like, I don't think Steph Curry, I don't think his top priority is basketball, and that's just not something I think that you're born with. I don't think you can develop what Tom Brady has, like the way he has dedicated himself to the game and the way he's developed his career. Trevor Lawrence will have an exciting rookie season. He had some intangibles that you teach somebody 2 years into being a quarterback already, like going into his rookie season, like being able to anticipate. He actually is able to, from what I've seen in tape, read the body languages of defenses and know like where they're going to be covering. It's absolutely insane. So hopefully he gets a good offense to go along with it. Everybody's excited, and I would be too if I was a Jacksonville Jaguars fan. And hopefully, they don't have to tank over and over again. Last year was kind of embarrassing.
Well, a quick point on that, though, Spence. You're an NFL fan. I'm an NFL fan. We cover the NFL. We follow the NFL closely. Think about it off the top of your head. I rack my brain of the last guy that came from college football into the NFL and was a successful head coach. It's tough to find.
So
the
hard.
latest coaches are all guys that have been NFL grinding, i.e. the Sean McVays, right? Sean Payton, obviously, Andy Reid in Kansas City. Down the line, Bill Belichick speaks for itself. But we're talking about people that have been in the NFL for years and have been refining their coaching craft in the NFL. You don't see guys going in, from the college ranks. And I mean, the last one I think of is obviously is Nick Saban, is the one who went with all the fanfare. You know what I mean? When he came out of college and went to Miami, and the expectation, because his father was a coach, and he was like, "Oh, he'll be fine," because he's been versed in what the NFL is going to expect of him and what he needs to do in the NFL. He was not successful as an NFL head coach, and obviously he's gone back to college and cemented his legacy. But my point being is that you want to talk about jury's out. Urban Meyer going to Jacksonville. We'll see exactly what happens with him as the head coach up there with Jaguars.
It is interesting because he's kind of seemed like a done deal for a while, and I think he's very far from being a done deal. We'll go down to the next quarterback who was taken, and of course, that was one of the most interesting picks we've had in NFL draft history, I think. One of the biggest smokescreens I've ever seen in my lifetime. The 49ers trade up to the 3rd overall pick very early, and they got their guy, although I would like to talk with you about that a little bit, and Trey Lance. Okay, do you think Kyle Shanahan really wanted to trade up to take Trey Lance in this draft? Do you think that was his guy?
You know what was hilarious? And Spence, I think you can second this with me. For about 2 weeks before the draft, we were talking about Mac Jones being like maybe a 10th pick overall at the best. At best, the 10th pick overall. Then, like 72 hours before the draft, all of a sudden it was the Niners are a lock to take Mac Jones at number 3.
Yeah.
And everybody was basically cementing 3 quarterbacks were going to go the first 3 picks, right? Obviously, Trevor first, and then Zach Wilson to the Jets at number 2. And then the Niners were going to take Mac Jones. There was kind of like dabblings about Trey Lance, and a lot of us don't even know much about it. I mean, we've seen some limited video of him. None of their games were ever on national TV, hardly at all. Like he was a big mystery. Obviously, in today's day and age, we get to see video and we get to, so we get kind of an idea about him, but we don't know how it's going to translate to the. I was shocked, Spence. I'm kind of brass taxing it here. I was surprised that they ended up going that direction, because I thought for sure it was going to be Mac Jones as their pick. They were given you mentioned the word smoke screen. It was the ultimate smoke screen. And I don't know how much it changed the top of the draft there, though, because like a lot of teams were locked in on their guy. And it kind of transpired that way, right? Where teams kind of pick guys that you would expect them to pick. So it wasn't like one of those deals where it was a domino effect, where it was like, now we got to, I want Mac Jones now. So we got to either try to trade up or move up. You know what I mean? It wasn't anything like that. So, short story, I was very surprised that he was the pick there. And I still, obviously we know about the athleticism. We know as far as, his work ethic, and we understand that he's a good kid. He's somebody who absolutely, I think, can take the reins of a franchise, but, we'll find out. I mean, it's all about what he can do in Shanahan's offense and how he is going to end up being as far as a quarterback in San Francisco, and I'm not going to. I'm not going to just use the cookie cutter description and say, oh, he's just a young guy who, comes from a small school that played no competition. I'm not going to go that route because we've seen plenty of quarterbacks that got drafted late in the draft, got drafted in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 8th round back when they had 10 rounds, where they were Hall of Famers. So I think it was, while it was a surprise, I think it could end up being a golden pick for the Niners.
It could be. It's a full risk, full reward type of deal. And think Tim Unglesby on Twitter checking in. Pete Carroll, last successful college coach. I think he's probably right. USC, I think he coached at, and he's won Super Bowls, of course. But this is what I'll say. I actually think Kyle Shanahan is fine with picking Trey Lance, but I think what he wanted to do was not trade up to 3rd overall and just have Mac Jones fall back to them, because nobody was talking about Mac Jones in the 3rd pick. It was soon, like throughout the entire season. He had a great one, but look, he's very limited in what he can do. He's not going to be taking off. And I think that a lot of teams are pressured into clearly now into taking these kinds of architectural quarterbacks. Like he's very similar to Pat Mahomes. He's like the mobile quarterback. He's probably a little more mobile than Pat Mahomes was, but we saw in the Super Bowl, Pat doesn't mind rushing for 100 yards in a game if he has to. And I think it's also a good thing that he'll have a year to sit behind Jimmy Garoppolo, who has already reached out to him. And it's good to see that it's not going to be like a lot of animosity there. I think that's what Kyle Shanahan probably wanted all along. So the 49ers, I mean, I don't know. I just don't know if I give up 3 first-round picks for Trey Lance. I don't know if I saw enough game tape from him that would warrant such a thing, because if they do not win a Super Bowl in the next 3 years, either if they win it this year with Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't even think the Trey Lance pick matters, because it's so hard to win a Super Bowl. It's so hard. So if they do it this year, and it doesn't matter if he's sitting behind the bench and they just move on from Jimmy Garoppolo in the offseason, or they extend him and maybe they even trade Trey Lance if they win a Super Bowl and they just keep going on Jimmy Garoppolo. But I will say this, man, you better win a Super Bowl very soon, either with Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo, or you will fall so flat on your face, especially if the Patriots have gotten their guy in Mac Jones and he is successful for them, because I think the Patriots are primed for a very good season next year. Half of their team opted out of the season, and now everyone's going to be back.
He mentioned, of course, Tim mentioned Pete Carroll. Isn't Pete Carroll kind of an outlier, though? Because Pete Carroll started out in the NFL, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he was a head coach for the Patriots back in the 90s, then goes to college.
Yeah, that's true.
Kills it in college, right? He wins a national championship, with a little controversy around the USC team, obviously. And then he goes to the NFL. Yes, he won 1 Super Bowl with the Seahawks. It was a great Seahawks team. Okay, you got to give Pete Carroll credit. Okay, yes, he won a Super Bowl. But I mean, I don't know. It's he's kind of like an outlier. And Family of O says, well, will Deshaun Watson play again? That's I absolutely. I think he absolutely will play again. We just got to see how this all plays out as far from a legal standpoint, right? And from what the NFL is going to do about all the legalities that are going on regarding this, because this just kind of hit us upside the head with Deshaun Watson. It was almost like just a barrage of obviously very unfortunate and not good things for Deshaun Watson and for the Houston Texans franchise. This is a franchise that's in disarray right now. And so I don't even know what Deshaun Watson's future is going to be, whether it's in, when he's going to play again or who he's going to play for again. So it's a tough question. I do think he's going to play again, though.
It's interesting, the Deshaun Watson situation, because before I go into whether or not I think he should ever play again, I want to ask you, what do you think about the situation where the Texans were sitting on this information for who knows how long, a year maybe? Yeah. They knew about it. He's a franchise quarterback, so they kept it under wraps. And then they're the ones who exposed it because of the trade talks. When I look at that situation, I've said this on my show before, I don't really care if they were or were not. It's his problem for doing these horrendous things. If he did them, of course, proven or innocent until proven guilty. Right. But it doesn't really matter to me whether or not the Saints or the Texans were sitting on this or not. The real important issue here should be whether or not he faces true punishment for what he did.
Well, to me, it's a snowball effect thing. It's just like you said, innocent until proven guilty is the standard that we have here in the United States of America. So we can speculate till the cows come home as far as what the end result will be regarding Deshaun Watson. you have to look at it in two ways. You got to look at it from a perspective of the legal standpoint, right? And what's going to happen as far as that's concerned, whether it's civil or criminal, because the Houston, and then you got to look at it from a football standpoint. The Houston Texans are going to look at this from a football standpoint. And by the way, anybody else that's looking out there to acquire Deshaun Watson also has to look at it from both standpoints.
Sure.
But it's the Texans who have to make who have to pull the trigger as far as the trade, right? If they're going to trade him or not trade him, it hasn't been going back and forth, right? It's been basically the Texans saying that they don't want to trade him, that they're not going to trade him, right? And then all of a sudden, all the information came out, and now they can't trade him because because all the leverage is gone and is shot into the ground. So they can't. They're just put in a very tough spot. And now everything's just kind of in limbo, right? I mean, there just hasn't been any. Obviously, we have so much more information as far as the NFL draft, everything else going on, that we haven't really talked about Deshaun Watson. But I just think that it's going to be a combination of time will tell as far as his legal issues, and then will the Texans pull the trigger as far as a deal, and will there be a team out there that will offer them enough where they're going to be willing to make a deal, And so outside of that, I don't really have much else to say on it because there's so much speculation going on, and so as far as what could happen legally, and it almost overtakes all the football stuff and all the football analysis as far as what would be the best team for him to go to, what's the value that they would get, like the Texans get if they traded him, and all this stuff. I mean, remember back when we were talking about the Jets and all the draft picks that they would give up to get Deshaun Watson and all the. I mean, it's almost like everything has just gone in the tank as far as all that stuff, and right now it's almost like it's all in limbo as far as the value for Deshaun Watson. So it's kind of a wait and see attitude right now regarding him and whether or not he'll get moved and what they will give up if they do move him.
Yeah, this is the final say I'll have on this. If he is proven guilty, it is the onus of the NFL to ban him forever. This is a perpetual problem where people have had domestic disputes, and this is sexual assault. You have to make it so. These guys do not care about fines, penalties. They don't even there has been so many. Melvin Gordon 2 months ago got pulled over for a DUI on camera, mind you, and he's off scot-free. Josh Jacobs here in Las Vegas, the same thing. Now, there wasn't film for that one, but he admitted that he had been drinking right before. And again, he as well is scot-free. So these guys don't care about these kinds of penalties. If you tell them they can't play in the NFL anymore and they can't make money, that's what's going to scare them from doing this. The 4th-round pick for the Titans already has been accused of punching a pregnant woman. If there's no punishment for them, a real punishment, then they're going to keep doing it. That's how I feel about it. That's the only way to truly punish these guys. And we'll have to see how the situation develops, but we'll transition back and we'll go into maybe one of the most exciting draft picks of the first round. And the Chicago Bears moved up to get him, Justin Fields. If you're a Chicago fan, I mean, you can't be more excited. No matter what, whether this works out or not, I have to give credit to the Bears front office because they made a huge mistake trading up and passing on Deshaun Watson and Pat Mahomes and taking Mitchell Trubisky and giving up assets to get that kind of guy. But they said, you know what? We made a mistake, and that's fine. We are willing to admit our mistake, but we want to trade up again and put ourselves in a very vulnerable spot to get who we believe to be our next franchise quarterback. I think that's awesome.
That's a Chicago Bears franchise that has been playing musical quarterbacks as of late, right? And obviously you draft Mitch Trubisky. They had high hopes for him. It didn't shake out. Now he's the backup in Buffalo. You bring in Nick Foles, a guy who was a Super Bowl MVP, and it's not like he went out and lit everybody's hair on fire on the field last year whatsoever. So they've decided that he's not going to be the guy. Now they bring in Andy Dalton, and it was kind of hilarious because you talk to Chicago Bear fans and you saw the reaction up there in the Windy City, and it was almost like, ho-hum, oh, wow, yeah. I mean, he's okay, but he's not going to, ruffle our feathers. He's not going to get us fired up as Bears fans that we have Andy Dalton now as our starting quarterback. So you did get the feeling, right, Spence, going in this draft that the Bears were going to look to make a move and pick up a signal caller in the draft, and that's exactly what they did. You knew immediately, Spence, didn't you? You knew that second that they moved into that spot, that they traded into that spot, that they were going to take a quarterback. And I said it right. I was down on the strip, glued to the TV watching this, and I'm like, they're absolutely 100% taking Justin Fields at this spot. And they did. And I think people are excited up there, and they should be in Chicago, because I think he's an electrifying guy. And there is no question that there's talent there. Now, people talk about the epileptic seizures and all this other stuff, the physical stuff. Obviously, it's not bad enough where the Bears are sour on him by any stretch. So people are juiced up there, and I think rightfully so, because I think they may have the guy that they may stick with for 3, 4, 5 years, as opposed to throwing out everybody, like I said, from Trubisky to in the last 15 years to Rex Grossman and all, and all, the Ortons and all these guys who are just, run of the mill quarterbacks in Chicago, where, they just, you just can't get, they're not franchise quarterbacks. And I think they really have a possibility here, because I honestly believe, and I'd like your opinion on this, I thought Justin Fields, talent-wise, should have been a top 5 pick. I thought he was a top 5 pick talent-wise. I would have taken him before I took Trey Lance. That's my personal opinion. Obviously, different organizations feel they have different needs at that position, or different chemistry issues regarding head coaches or offensive coordinators. And he wasn't that guy that was picked there. But I don't think there's any, in my opinion, he's a guy that should probably from a talent standpoint and from a resume standpoint, should have gone top 3 in the draft as far as quarterback concerned. And we'll see what he does up there in Chicago. I think that the Bears fans are excited.
Yeah, there's a couple of things, right, when you look at the scouting report for him. And the first one is that the Ohio State simply just has not produced starting caliber quarterbacks in a very long time. I think there's been like 2 that have
Mike Tomczak's not exciting to you?
It's been a long time, let's say that, at the very least. Now, I'm not saying who cares, because you can't compare apples to apples, like what happened in 2002 is the same thing, but that's the first one. And I'm telling you right now, that's on the back of some GM's minds for right there. The other part is he has a long way to go with pocket awareness. He took a lot of bad sacks in Ohio State, but that's a part of being a rookie, I feel like. The other part is he doesn't have anticipation like a Trevor Lawrence, who is probably a generational talent. So he isn't the perfect prospect, but what he does have is he's one of the most accurate passers. He was last year in college football. I don't think people really understand that. I think the only deep passer that was more accurate than him was Mac Jones. So you don't usually see that out of Ohio State quarterbacks, period, anyways. So that was pretty good for them. And again, I think the Bears made the best move of the draft here, and I think he'll be their franchise quarterback. You'll have the chance to start day one. I know people give a lot of talk badly about Andy Dalton, but he's a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL, in my opinion. Maybe not going to lead you to a Super Bowl or anything like that, but he's a game manager. He is done.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a surefire thing that Justin Fields starts week 1 for them. I think it would do him very well to sit a year behind Andy Dalton, as much as Bear fans probably would be screaming otherwise, but Justin Fields isn't going to lead them to a Super Bowl next year. So if you can help him developmental wise for that whole season, and I think they have a nice way to go. And the other part about this pick, and it seems a little obvious, but this is Matt Nagy's last chance. They need to, if he does play Justin Fields this season, it's playoffs or bust for him, because he's known as this offensive guru, this offensive mastermind, quarterback whisperer, and maybe he hasn't had the tools just quite yet, but now he does. There's no play in the playbook that you cannot call for Justin Fields. So Matt Nagy's job is on the line here, but they had to make a move like this to move the needle for their franchise.
You make a fair point about college program quarterbacks, right? When it comes to the Buckeyes, a lot of people say that, by the way, about Alabama as well too. The AJ McCarrons and we obviously Tua is still out there, and we'll see what he does. I gotta say though, Spence, when I see Justin Fields, I think he could be the exception. I really think that. We obviously know the history of Ohio State and their quarterbacks, and they're not there. There's no one I can think about, nobody in the NFL in the last 25, 30 years from Ohio State that's been a great NFL quarterback. But for some reason, Spence, I'm reaching back. I have a feeling this could be the one that breaks the ice. Much like Much like Grant Hill was that one player that finally broke the ice at Duke that was actually a decent NBA player. You know, like it was like your Duke puts out all these great players in college basketball, and yet no one was ever any good in the NBA until Grant Hill got there. And then they ended up getting like 7 or 8, and now they have like 10 guys that were great that played at Duke. Maybe this breaks the ice, Spence, where, you know, you get a guy at the quarterback position that comes out of Columbus, Ohio, that could be a difference maker in the NFL.
Yeah, and he showed such an act for improving upon himself. You saw, like, from week to week, he did not make the same mistake twice, which is the whole idea of him not being coachable, I think, was one of the most ridiculous storylines going into the NFL draft. So we'll do one more storyline from the NFL draft, so a little personal to you. The Lions, they take what I believe to be the second best prospect in the draft at 5th overall. I know Lions fans aren't particularly excited about it. They would have liked the whole Justin Fields, the home run picks, but this is what I'll say. Like, if the Lions had picked in Justin Fields, it may have well just ruined his career right off the bat, because if you go into a team and you don't have any weapons, what happened to Sam Darnold? I mean, his career is in shambles right now. He's kind of like on the edge. There were people talking about the Panthers potentially picking a quarterback in this year's draft. So you have to make sure that there's a team ready for you. I mean, look at the Chiefs. Like, Pat Mahomes was inheriting a playoff caliber team, and, you know, his skill is able to elevate them even further beyond. But nonetheless, they had weapons available to him, and the Lions got rid of all of theirs, seemingly. I like their running back from last year, but, you know, Kenny Golladay is gone. Marvin Jones is gone as well. I think this is the responsible and one of the best moves the Lions have made in a very long time.
Yeah, this is a Lions franchise that is in major transition, Spence. And it seems like it's been rebuilding for years, which it kind of has, you know, but they have the big trade, obviously, one of the bigger name trades with when you send Matthew Stafford, your franchise quarterback for the last decade plus, to the Rams, and then you bring in Jared Goff, someone who, you know, is, you know, say what you want, what he's perceived as is an underachiever, right? He's perceived as a guy who hasn't lived up to, and it's tough to live up to when you're the number 1 overall pick, right? And you make it to a Super Bowl and you lose. I mean, you're going to get negative attention, let's put it that way, when it comes to Jared Goff. But the weapons thing was the debate. And as far as Lions fans and Detroit media is concerned, it was that difficulty of, do you bring in somebody that can solidify an offensive line? Let's be straight about it too, Spence. It's never sexy. Teams don't get fired up. Fans don't get fired up if you take an offensive lineman in the first round. It just doesn't happen. You're not going to get, you know, absolutely gassed up about that. Okay. Now, Penei Sewell is a guy who I don't think there's any question in my mind. He could be a 7-10-year Pro Bowler. He can be that kind of guy. He can be somebody that you can just put there on your offensive line. Is going to be great for years to come. But I'm telling you, I'm a Lions fan. I grew up in Michigan. I know Lions fans, what they were thinking after that pick. They were thinking, man, we could have got a game breaker. We could have got a Devontae Smith. We could have got a Jalen Waddle. We could have got a piece to add offensively, because we don't have any. And they think in their heads, even though we have a couple weapons, but nothing really, they thought in their heads, we have nobody. We have nobody there. Not obviously, they discount DeAndre Swift because he was a rookie last year. I think he's going to be decent.
Me too.
And I think they rightfully discount the likes of Rashad Perriman, who they brought in, obviously, from the Ravens. And they also brought in Terrell Williams, the wide receiver who didn't even play last year for the Raiders. I think he had
injury. Yeah,
he had an injury, so he basically didn't play for the Raiders. But the belief is if he can come back and play like he did 2 years ago, he'll be solid. But these aren't A1 receivers. Then you lose Galladay to the Giants. You lose Marvin Jones to the Jaguars. And so you think to yourself, what does Jared Goff have here? And what I meant by transition is new head coach, new general manager in Brad Holmes, new head coach in Dan Campbell, a lot of unknowns, okay? And so Lions fans weren't exactly overjoyed by the pick of Sewell at number 5, but I think in the long run, Spence, it's going to benefit the Lions franchise down the line, and they'll be able to add pieces offensively to get, but I still, it doesn't matter though. It's still a team that's in transition. They're expected to be one of the worst teams in the NFL next year. We're talking about the Lions and the Texans basically as like the 2 worst teams in the NFL. So, you can't really be too optimistic if you're a Lions fan right now, but I think you can be optimistic about your number 5 pick this year, because I think he's a guy that could stick and be a good player. And a cool little side note, Penei Sewell growing up was a Detroit Lions fan. So he wants to be there. And he's been glowingly
Pretty
talking
rare.
about, you know what I mean? Like he was a Lions fan, which is amazing to me. But so he absolutely wants to be there, as does the number 2 pick and the number 3 pick. They picked a defensive tackle out of Washington in the 2nd round, and I believe in the 4th round, was it third round? I think it was 3rd round. They picked a kid who's got a lot of upside on the as far as a defensive tackle out of NC State. That is also a Detroit Lions fan. So for what it's worth, I mean, it's good to have guys that want to be a part of that organization, because let's be frank about it, it's the Lions. And there's a lot of people that don't want to be part of the organization based on the prior upper management and based on the ownership and based on the prior head coaches. Matthew Patricia was atrocious. So overall, though, I think it was a solid pick for the Lions, and it was reflected in that. I mean, the experts across the board, no one had any ties to Detroit or the organization, graded it basically as an A- or a B+, them taking Sewell there at number 5. So I thought it was a good thing.
Yeah, and you don't have to go far down the valley in Detroit to figure out that you can't build a team in one season. The Detroit Pistons were one of the busiest teams in the offseason, and yet they are still the worst team in the NBA, if not one of the worst. You can't build a playoff team with one go at it. You're not going to pick everybody that you need. And in some drafts, the reality of the situation might be the guy that you need, like in that position, is just not going to be there. So you might as well just get what you can get now, get somebody who you know is going to be a very good player for you. And I think that's what they did. And I think I commend them for doing that. And I think it's a sign for them going in the right direction. I'm actually doing a mini documentary series with Brian Feldman soon about the Detroit Lions. So be sure to stay tuned for that on my Twitter at Spencer the Wiz and on my YouTube channel, Delivering Sports. One more topic here. I want to talk a little bit of basketball because I find it very interesting, and that's LeBron James. I'll play some of his comments from last night first, and then we'll talk about it. LeBron is one of the funniest people alive to me.
Well, it doesn't matter at the end of the day if I'm not, 100% close to 100%. It don't matter, where we land, So, that's my mindset. And, if this happens to we end up at 6th or 5th or whatever the case may be, or if we end up in the playoff, whatever that thing is, whoever came up with that need to be fired. But whatever. The first half it does it feels really good. Obviously warming up for the game. Everything is going well. In the last 2 games at halftime, after the break, it's kind of got a little sore on me, a little tight.
So that was LeBron James on his soapbox. Of course, he loves to do that. He's on Twitter all the time now. And first, let me just say this: I can separate LeBron as a player from the person. LeBron is the most entertaining basketball player in the world to watch. I mean, it's just you're not never going to get your money's worth watching that guy on the court. If you go to see a game or if you watch on TV, he's not going to waste your time when he's out there. He's going to give his full effort. But when you do stuff like this, it really looks pretty bad on you, because at the beginning of the season, when this thing was unanimously voted in, let's not even say the beginning, let's say when it was voted unanimously, and the only people who had a problem with it, by the way, were the 7th-seeded Dallas Mavericks. But the problem is LeBron didn't come out and say anything during that time. But now when they're sliding, suddenly it's an issue, and whoever made it needs to be fired. I mean, this is the problem I think LeBron James has, is that he has so many people around him that tell him yes all the time. Like, they don't tell him that what he's saying is ludicrous. And I think that comes from being a mega celebrity at a high school age. And I think as he's gotten older, it's only gotten worse. As he's a billionaire now from his $1 billion contract with Nike, no one is around him to keep this guy afloat, to say no to him, to say dude, what are you saying right now? You look so stupid. First of all, calling for someone to be fired in the middle of a pandemic, you want to call it. Now I know he doesn't actually have the ability to do that, but that's a very serious thing to say in my opinion, to just throw that out because you're upset because your team's sliding, to say something like that. He looks very silly.
He is the face of the NBA, so I hesitate to want to just have this go in one ear and out the other, but it probably should be, Spence, because let's be straight about this. This is all about timing. That's all this is about right now, because make no mistake about it. LeBron James or Anthony Davis or Caruso or Kuzma or any of the Lakers, nobody was talking about any of this at the beginning of the season. You know why, Spence? Because they all expected to be a number 1 or a number 2 seed in the Western Conference going into the playoffs. Okay. They never, this is all about timing. Okay. And oh, by the way, when I say timing, I'm talking about the other night when they got bounced by the Toronto Raptors, right? And they lose that game. Or was it the Toronto Raptors or was it
a shorthanded Toronto Raptors?
It was the Raptors that beat them. And it just so happened that they slipped into the discussion, into the spot where, it was going to get dicey here at the end of the season, where they could possibly be in that play-in situation. And then that's all of a sudden when LeBron James popped off. I echo a lot of what you just said regarding LeBron James. I'm somebody that absolutely admires him from a basketball standpoint. He is unique. He is spectacular. He is one of the all-time greats. But he absolutely positively makes mistakes when it comes to issues like this. And look, he made a mistake when he did that stupid sit down where he said, I'm taking my talents to South Beach and join Miami instead of just doing it, on the down low and just going there. That was a mistake that he made. And this is a mistake too. And I echo your sentiments regarding, talking about getting somebody canned during a pandemic is ridiculous. Okay. But I think I want to say to LeBron to his face, I'm like, LeBron, you're bigger than this, okay? You shouldn't be going down this road. You shouldn't even be talking about this, okay? Let it go. Stay away from it. Don't go anywhere near it. And you brought up, the people around him. Do you have any people that are advising you regarding your public relations and regarding your public image? Because you are going to you're getting killed for this, and rightfully so, because you shouldn't be commenting on this. If your team is in a position where, for example, I'll throw out scenarios. You get hurt, right? Which you're injured. You're probably not going to play the rest of the regular season. Now Dennis Schroeder's injured. He's not going to play, looks like, for the rest of the regular season. All right. There is a situation that the Lakers may end up in that position where they have to play in those play-in games, and have to kind of grind their way through the Western Conference playoffs. Just deal with it and do it. Don't bitch and moan about it and say, well, I don't think there should be this way. When the season's about to end and when you guys were nowhere to be found, when, as Spence pointed out, it was a unanimous decision. It was a done deal. Nobody back there, and no players, by the way, were bitching to the media saying, "Oh, back then, this whole thing's stupid. It shouldn't even, people should get bounced out for making this decision." Nobody ever talked about it. We didn't hear anything about that. But now all of a sudden, because they lost that game and they got, they're in that position. Now all of a sudden, LeBron cares. It reeks of just. It's just bad. I don't know. I don't know what to say. It makes LeBron look bad, and it's another bad decision on his part. Is it life or death? Absolutely not. It's not really life or death, but it's not a road he should have went down. Let's put it that way, Spence.
Yeah, and I think the playing game is objectively a great thing for the NBA. Now, I think they can restructure it. I think they can make it better. And that's a conversation for another time because we are out of time today. But I wanted to thank you for joining the show today. I had a lot of fun, a lot of great conversation. There's so much going on in the world of sports. But you can follow him, Christian Wynn, that is, on Twitter at Christian Wynn. You can follow me on Twitter at Spencer the Wiz. Thanks for joining.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Spence.
Yeah, so also make sure to give me a follow on YouTube at Blue Milk Boys Gaming. You look it up. That's my main YouTube channel, although you can also go on Delivering Sports for exclusive interviews before I show them live on my show. But on that's going to do it for today's broadcast.